we're the instruments and the vessels of information that's coming. And at the end of the day, we are still human too, right? And we're processing and interpreting and or repeating what we hear, see, and sense to an individual. So, it's a gift. You're in sacred space with people. You're providing them guidance and information that is for their highest and best at that point in time. Because that's the only thing that spirit will provide for us. However, as humans, we all have free will and ego. So even though the path that is before you is the one that you contracted with your soul and your Akashic record to live and to experience in this lifetime, you still have free will and an ego. So, the guidance that comes from a reading is, for your highest and best, and it's for that moment in time. And it's relevant for what's going on in your life in that moment in time, but you still do have many paths or opportunities before you. And it's called choice.
Welcome, everybody, to All Things Energy. Paul and I are having a great conversation about our exciting night that we had on Tuesday night. We had 57 people join us for our psychic reading lives. How awesome was that? Hi, Paul. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Dana. I'm well, thank you. I'm well. Yes, we had a great evening on Tuesday night, and lots of people showed up on our YouTube and Zoom platforms for the opportunity for readings and demonstrations from the spirit world. It was a good night.
It was a good night. We could have gone on for another hour, I'm sure.
We did, yeah. We did about an hour and a half, I think, in total. And we still didn't get through everybody that invested some time and showed up for the evening, sadly.
We are going to get to you at some point. Just send me an email. We'll try and put you at the top of the list next time, just to make sure that we're being fair. So maybe if you asked a question last time and you're joining us again, maybe you'll let somebody else kind of come in instead. Okay, so we'll figure this out as we go. I mean, it was only our second live, but it was very successful as far as I was concerned.
It was a really good night for sure. No doubt about it. So today's an interesting day, Dana. Today's the spiritual energy of 4 today. So the 4 directions, the 4 winds. This is a day of solid foundations and building today. And then look at the nice building behind me at my new office.
That's awesome. It's beautiful. That's your view now?
Yes. Yeah. We moved offices in the early part of the year. So we sit in a space called River Landing. So right now, if I sort of took you for a walk around, we have a full floor of glass windows overlooking the river and the downtown core. So it's stunning.
So great feng shui. Anything, a river running behind you is always a good feng shui. So that's a great thing. It'll help you work better. And it's so funny. I respect, Paul, how you can balance your spiritual life with your corporate life. I think I would have a very challenging time doing that. Thank God I've been doing readings now for 20 years, doing it full time. Can you imagine that long? Holy moly.
That's incredible, Dana.
It is incredible, but I really admire the fact that you can kind of do both in the way you are. Do you feel like you bring your spirituality to your corporate event, or are people that you work with very up on your spirituality and know what you do on the side?
That's a really good question. So this past week when we did our live event on Tuesday, and putting it out there through social media. Of course, it shows up on yours and or my Facebook, Instagram type platforms. However, I chose this past week to also socialize it on my LinkedIn account, which LinkedIn is typically, the professional platform. And over the years, I have, tried to separate my 2 lives after I finished doing readings full time when I was still in Cambridge in 2011 and moved out west. I sort of tried to keep them separate, and the odd person or the odd time things would come up where people were made aware of my spiritual gifts. So this, sort of opportunity to bring the 2 of them together, it'll be interesting to see what conversations occur in the workplace, because I know several people from the company I work for obviously checked out the link on my LinkedIn account. So that will become common knowledge. But thinking about it in terms of being a leader, so obviously I've had some leadership roles over the last decade or more. It's interesting being a medium and a psychic, and I certainly never ever use it as a weapon by any stretch of the imagination. I look at it as a gift, and in building teams and building cultures and supporting people, it's sometimes I do check in and I look at my team holistically. I never look at them as an employee number or just an individual. I look at them as a mind, body, and a soul. They've got a life outside of work. They've got families. They've got all kinds of stuff going on. And I may or may not pick up on some of that dynamic or some of that energy, but it helps me as a leader be able to be compassionate, demonstrate empathy, be vulnerable with my team, right? So you think about leadership styles in this day and age, and the sort of chat is around authentic leadership. And even Brene Brown, who writes constantly about shame, resiliency, and vulnerability, it actually, in my opinion, makes me a better leader. And what I've watched in my career over the last decade, as I've done digital transformations or been hired to do transformations for companies, I have to sit down and talk to the leadership team about, well, it's actually cultural transformation we're doing. You have to start with people. You have to focus on people. Processes, governance, and technology are the after components, are not the first priority. So sometimes my bosses have been frustrated with me, but my focus is always on people, right? So, and I will sometimes use my gifts to ensure that I'm looking at somebody holistically and not just from one angle.
Well, the only reason that we're in business is because of people. So if we don't take check of that, then what's the point of any of it, really?
Yeah. So Tuesday, sort of circling back to Tuesday and thinking about the opportunity that we had to be in sacred space with people. And, there was over 50 people online, and you and I are doing readings using technology, and, thanks to Reg in the background, trying to keep up with all the questions that were coming in. And I know he might have lost track because people were asking several questions at once.
What's his experience like? Did he was he good at?
Yes, he was okay. He was a little bit stressed at one point, and you may have heard him. He did come into the office where I was and just said, I couldn't scroll back. He kept saying to me, and people are asking all kinds of questions. So it's something for you and I to think about, because we're in sacred space with people, number one, and there's lots of ears, people listening, which of course, you and I both done public forms of mediumship over time, and you're always very careful about,
You're vulnerable, you're putting it out there. It's now in cyber world live forever. So you better be okay with being wrong if that's ever the case. That's the way I look at it.
And, as mediums and psychics, we're not always 100% right.
No, we are not.
We
don't ever expect that.
We're the instruments and the vessels of information that's coming. And at the end of the day, we are still human too, right? And we're processing and interpreting and or repeating what we hear, see, and sense to an individual. So, it's a gift. You're in sacred space with people. You're providing them guidance and information that is for their highest and best at that point in time. Because that's the only thing that spirit will provide for us. However, as humans, we all have free will and ego. So even though the path that is before you is the one that you contracted with your soul and your Akashic record to live and to experience in this lifetime, you still have free will and an ego. So, the guidance that comes from a reading is, for your highest and best. And it's for that moment in time. And it's relevant for what's going on in your life in that moment in time, but you still do have many paths or opportunities before you. And it's called choice. Free will.
Absolutely. I concentrate on looking at the highest good reality. So there's always paths. If you choose this way, I can read this path. If you choose this way, I can read that path. But there's so many of them. And you know, quite often when I am wrong in a reading, or I didn't exactly get the vision correctly, quite often at the moment that I say the vision, the person, because of the language or because of the vision, decided to go a different direction because maybe they saw it from a different perspective. So they thought, oh, maybe I don't really want that right at this time, or maybe there's something else that I need to do beforehand. So quite often they'll actually change direction, which is good. That's part of the process. You want to be able to remember that as well. But, you know, this isn't, although it's scientific, and doing readings is very scientific, and you can measure it, you really can. There is lots of people who actually measure psychic abilities out in the world. They do, you know, psychic experiments on people and so on and so forth. I've actually talked to professors who do that, who actually test your abilities. It's very interesting. We had long conversations about that. Maybe I'll talk about that one day, but yes, there's a science to it, maybe not an exact science. And that's something where, you know, we need to give a little give and take. When you're coming for a reading, we're only giving you what we're seeing at the moment, and we really have nothing else to go on. It is just what's coming into mind, into our telepathic thoughts, and we say the vision as we see it. That's really how we do it, or how I do it, at least. I don't want to speak for Paul. I know he reads just a little bit differently than I do, and I've had wonderful readings from Paul. So I don't know, am I going off into the weeds here?
Think about it. So, you know, there's only one source of energy, right? There are many modalities in the human fashion that we connect, but there is only one source of energy. So my experiences and my relationship to my spirit guides and to the one source of energy is mine, right? Just like you have yours in your dictionary and the way that you do it, so do many other people. And as you connect to that one source of energy, and thinking about it is a science, right? And we invest, you know, this is not a bad thing, but you and I invested a lot of time, and we continue to invest a lot of time in maintaining, sustaining, building our connections to spirit and our vessel, our body. Like there are certain things we have to do, right, to have that sort of purity of connection, right? Like not eating before doing readings. There's all kinds of.
Sometimes I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm starving. The old joke about no, I'm not medium, I'm actually extra large, because we crave sugar so much all the time after.
Oh, I totally crave it. It's crazy. Or before readings too. I'll actually crave it. I'll need a little bit of a boost before readings. I try very hard not to, but definitely there's some bad habits that could come with being a psychic if you're not careful.
Yes. And you know, there is a science behind it. There is research and data in terms of understanding psychic ability and mediumship ability. And, you know, there's no doubt about it. You know, go way back in history, even when they used to do physical forms of mediumship with ectoplasm and spirit drawings and lifting of tables. In order to do that kind of mediumship, those individuals sat in circle at the same day, the same time, potentially for years, in order to manifest that type of physical mediumship. When you look way back in time, today it's practiced. It's not practiced as often, but that is evidential data, right? In terms of the component of it.
Well, I can tell you, I don't want to, you know, blow this up bigger than it is, but when I do psychic parties, and I'll do groups of 10, 15, 20 people, so I'll be there for quite a bit of time, and I'll be talking and bringing through spirit. And, you know, on a number of occasions on my way to my car, I would have this white milky film in my mouth that I would actually have to spit out because there was so much of it. And it was bright white, like it wasn't phlegm or anything like that. It was just this bright white yucky thing and I would spit it out. And I would always think to myself, that's ectoplasma. And not big mounds of it, like they come out like cotton balls and stuff like that, like you look in the old pictures. But definitely, I think it had something to do with it.
Yeah. And one of the activities or events I would have happen when I would do readings, and people would actually point it out after the fact, is I would physically change. My face would change. So
I love their faces when that happens.
whatever spirit came through for them at that point in time, I would actually physically begin to morph a little bit.
And I can feel it. I can feel that when that happens. It's sort of like a wave of jello that comes over top of you and you're like, oh, here we go. And kind of an uncomfortable feeling sometimes too, because you know there's something in your energy that isn't normally there on a day-to-day basis. So we do put ourselves in you know, a position of really being connected to the universe. And I think that's so important when you're doing this for a living.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, there is still, you know, the odd time that you're doing a reading for somebody and it's difficult to connect, right? Because it's just not meant to be. They may have some walls up and sort of, you need to prove to me your ability. And, you know, as professionals, those are the moments in time where we need to identify and say, you know, I'm sorry, I can't read for you, right? And there's no right or wrong. There's no judgment. It's just simply, this isn't meant to happen for whatever reason. And, you know, sometimes I've struggled through trying to give readings to people and, you know, they're not maybe the best reading. I'm not feeling good about the experience. And of course, obviously the client or the individual is not potentially overly happy with the experience either. So those are the opportunities, you know, or in the past where I've had to rectify situations and just say, you know, I'm sorry, you know, you know, there's no exchange of energy here. So therefore, you know, you're not paying for your reading. And it just is what it is, right? And it's not, again, sort of the judgment of any kind, but, you know, sometimes people get a little bit upset about that and they don't understand, well, what do you mean you can't read me? But it's just, or the messages that come through are just
convoluted.
They're not resonating for the individual. And as professionals, those are the moments in time where we need to stop the energy and say, this isn't going to work.
There's been a few times in my career, I had this one lady who would call me from Mexico and she called for a reading. I gave her reading as normal. And, you know, I read kind of the same way. I get messages the same way. So I'm going about my day doing what it is. And the next day I get an email from her. She just wasn't happy, no matter what way you could look at it. And I don't normally give refunds, but she was really making a big stink. So I sent her money back. And I probably told this story before. And about 3 weeks later, she writes me an email and says, I think I owe you your money back. And I was like, oh, why is that? So she needed to wait a little bit to allow things to kind of unfold before there was a recognition that she had a reading. And as she said, she goes, okay, this happened, and this is what you told me. And she goes, I think I owe you your money back. She actually paid me back. So it was kind of interesting how that flows. So give it time when you have a reading and maybe things don't make sense at the beginning or things don't resonate with you. That's okay. Always record your reading too. I always suggest that, or record when I'm doing readings. I have no problem with anybody recording me. So at least you have the validation or the information for later.
Yep. I always encourage either recording it or writing it down. And now, of course, in this day and age with the virtual world, I often will sit and do a little bit of automatic writing before I meet with a client, right? And it's just because I want to tap into the angelic realm and get some guidance. And then I will always pass that off to them at the end of a reading. But circling back to a comment you made is, you know, there's lots of times when I was doing readings for people and they would look at me and go, well, that's not right. And no. And you think, well, you know, I hate to say it this way, but you develop a thick skin. But the reality is, what it taught me was to trust what spirit was giving me, right? And I'm giving off exactly what I see, sense, hear, and I'm giving it to you. because that's my connection. I trust that connection. I've built that connection.
That's right.
And I trust the process, and I trust spirit. So of course, sometimes that would land with my clients and they're like, yeah, no, sorry, this isn't right. And, they'd be disgruntled or frustrated, and that's fine. But like you just said, the irony of running into some of my clients, it might have been a month later. It might have been
years later.
A year later, they'd come up to me. And of course, number one, I might recognize them. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I know you, but okay, I probably gave you a reading.
Yeah.
I certainly will not remember the content of that reading at all. And so they'll come up to me, and the conversation always starts with, do you remember when you said X, Y, and Z to me? And I'm like, okay, and, at the time, I just didn't understand. That didn't make sense. And then it's always the, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what's happened. And then it was just like, and I smile and go, yeah.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. And as a psychic and a medium, we see, well, it's both past, present, and future, right? So there's a whole plethora that we have to decipher. Unlike a psychic itself, a psychic reads the energy from the solar plexus of your body, and it's all futuristic based. We're picking up all of that continuum, right, along the way. So
So just a little tip: if you're ever having a reading and you don't feel like it's making sense to you, you will actually throw your psychic off if you're like, no, and sitting there with your arms folded and what have you. You will throw them off. So your best bet is to just not say anything and allow it to kind of unfold. I mean, that's why you're there. You're there for the experience. You're not there to guide what we say. We're there to help you get the messages that the universe is talking about. So just, a future little tip when you're going for a reading, because there's a skill in getting a reading as there is in giving a reading.
Well, the old adage of, as you and I, even publicly, right? Whether we were in church or whatever, doing readings, or even online, spirit is very respectful, and you have to be open and wanting a reading. So let's take as an example, me as a leader in a work environment. I just don't automatically start reading people because, number one, it's not respectful. And number two, if they haven't given me the sound of their voice, or actually have said, yes, I'm open to this reading, it's a no-go.
Interfering. Exactly.
This is not an intrusive or disrespectful ability to read somebody's deepest and darkest secrets. That's not what it's about. But you and I, as professionals, we need the sound of their voice, their approval. So yes, I'm open for this reading, whatever that looks like, for the doors and the veil to lift for us to give them the reading. Their role in this is to be open, right? And to be willing to receive the reading, which for us, we ask for only the highest and the best for them at that moment in time to come through. So it is a mutually beneficial, it's a contract, right? And the client has to be open, willing, and able, as much as the psychic medium has invested the time and energy to care for the vessel, maintain their relationship and connection to spirit, to bring the information through.
And make sure that, before your reading, to prepare, if there's people from the other side you're hoping to hear from, make sure you put a little beacon out to them. Think about what's important. Think about the things that you would like to know in the reading, and bring that in your energy in some way. You don't have to tell them, you don't have to tell the reader, but if it's in your energy, the data is with you. And if the psychic is true and real, they'll be able to read the data.
Yeah, that is true. And there are, over time, we've all seen it, read about it. There are people that on the continuum are learning and growing and trying to invest in their gift as mediums and psychics. People will call them all kinds of names, like scam artists or fakes and stuff.
Con artists.
Con artists, but and that's fine. That's an opinion, and I can't judge the experience. They had an experience with somebody, but I'm not sure that they're con artists, but they're in the process of developing. They're trying. Yep. Right.
Give constructive feedback. If you're going to say something so defamatory, make sure you're giving some background to it and constructive feedback, because if a reader is doing this as their job, it is very important that they understand that they are serving their clients. They certainly don't want unhappy people out there in the world floating around. So very important to give constructive feedback.
And, you know, you and I as professional mediums and psychics, we appreciate feedback. That helps us grow, right? As whether, you know, I'm in a workplace, right? You always want continuous loops of feedback to help you grow.
Of course.
It's no different in the profession of being a psychic and a medium. You want that feedback because that helps us hone our skills and to grow.
And we changed too, our abilities in the last couple of years. Boy, the energy has just shifted and changed. And even being a reader, I know I'm reading people differently, but I'm also discovering a new language as well, which I find very interesting. And I mean, I take this on. I think it's fantastic, but the energy has changed. And I'm sure you can relate, Paul, because when you were doing it years ago to what it is now, I bet you any money it's changed.
Well, I chuckle and I draw this analogy because as a leader in the IT space, and we all know how fast technology changes, right? And becomes redundant. Taking that same philosophy across to being a psychic and a medium with how fast the energy is moving and change is happening, it's exponential, and it's almost like working in the IT field.
It's data.
The language is changing, but it's the speed of which things are happening is incredible. And
For sure.
And I think that, you know, it impacts all of us as humans, right? With the speed of energy and what's transpiring around us.
Well, I think on that note, I would really, we're definitely going to put together a lot more lives. And I really think that it was amazing. And I just enjoyed myself immensely. I was up there for a few hours after that. I couldn't relax and go to bed. I'm usually in bed by 10 o'clock at the latest, but I think I was up until about 12:30 that night. So the energy was definitely high. So we're going to do this a little bit more often, and Paul and I are going to work together, and we're going to make it smoother. We'd love your suggestions. Definitely call us, or even just comment on the chat and be part of the group. I mean, we're here to help and we're here to serve. We didn't mention we were going to collect donations for the, it slipped my mind, Grand Upper Credit Union or Upper Credit Humane Society, for this Humane Society that has a no-kill policy. So we'll make sure that we integrate that next time. But we want to do this. Make sure. What is your suggestion there, Paul, and to make this better and smoother?
Exactly that. So you and I are starting out on this process of sharing our gifts with everyone. So we appreciate people's feedback and patience as we work through sort of the dynamics and the technology and sort of begin to smooth it out. So we appreciate everybody's patience attending. And then, of course, you and I will continue to work out all the kinks and make it a more seamless experience for everyone.
I'm learning a lot of the technology in the background, so you're going to have to forgive me. I had a little fub on one of the videos, and I'm getting really good at editing too. So we're trying, we're working at it.
And the irony is you and I live 3,000 kilometers apart now instead of 3.
I know, that's interesting, isn't it?
All right. Good. I am in the work world today, and my work day is starting, so I need to love you and leave you at this point in time. So
that is wonderful. Just want to mention to everybody, Saturday night, June 11th, 8 p.m. Sue Nadeau, and we're talking numerology insights. So we'll need your name and your birth date, and we're going to find out with your numbers what's happening in the next couple of months. So hopefully we have as great of a turnout as Paul and I have. Got lots of great feedback from it. So we hope you join us there on All Things Energy. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye, Paul.
Bye, Dana. Be well, everybody. Take care.